We go. Hey everyone, John Doyle and Emily Gullikson here for another video analysis of our Derby preps, and we got the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream on Saturday. It's race 12. Emily, this is an interesting race.
It is, and I guess we should start as we kind of get through this, but talking about number 12, Mo Donegal, because we might have some inside information that they're going to scratch. What have you heard lately?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything lately, but I think they were iffy going into the race. They were waiting for the draw, and when they got the draw, they said, I think I agree with them. I think I saw something written too, actually. I mean, the distance is not the the right distance for this horse. The kind of the way the track plays, his style. I don't know. I mean, he's deserved favorite, even if he goes. But I'm thinking he might not go. I'm gonna kind of play this as he doesn't go.
Yeah. And maybe that's kind of a good way to kind of start, is with the Holy Bull, if we want to kind of start the assessment there. But yeah, because I went back and watched that, and I mean, just in terms of Donegal, the more I watch it, the more I thought that horse ran just such a good race. But yeah, do you want to start there?
Yeah, so I mean, I could bring up you want to bring up the plot for that race too?
Sure.
Okay, let me just. I was ill prepared here. So
well, we said we were going to do this organically, so okay. we're really talking it through the first time.
Yes, I think it leaves for better TV. Okay, so I'm going to pull it up here, and then I got the grid too with those horses, in the race too. So yeah, so this was the race. We did this race. I did this race with Donald Harris, and we basically, we went with the 8 and the 4. We thought that they had a big pace advantage in the race, as you can see, and that's kind of the way it unfolded. And we thought Mo Donegal would need more room, more distance down the road, but he ran a great race, running third in that race. So just so you could watch, understand what this means. W means the horse won the gold. Silver is the silver, the second place finisher, and bronze is the third. So you can just see how it laid out there. So yeah, so we got 5 of these horses coming back, 4 or 5 of these horses coming back in this race. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, of the horses coming out of that race, I'm really not as excited about any of them going forward as much as I am Mo Donegal, though I do think Simplification, who will actually run here as the number 2 horse, is probably, maybe he's going to be favored in this race.
Yeah,
I think maybe between him and the number 8, Emmanuel, who obviously we'll get to. But a lot of people after the race and just sort of what was in running were like really impressed and thought, oh, if he would have broke well, he's gonna win and make this big move. And the more I go back and watch it, he really doesn't make much of a move, like as strong of a move as I think people initially saw when they watched the race. And sometimes that happens. I get caught up in that too, watching trips, and I go back and watch it. It's like, well, that wasn't really quite what I saw. Sometimes, especially if you have the sound on, the excitement can kind of bring that out. And I just, I wasn't as impressed with that race as a whole, and just kind of with this horse going forward.
Yeah, me neither. And I thought that race might take something out of him. He's more of a speed horse, so he had to kind of do something different. And that's why I gave it a hard. I kind of put that note in there. I just think that he may regress off of that effort. And so. Yeah, and to me, when you look at the plot of the race coming in, let me go to this race. I'm all over the place. You could see that there's no, the plot fit is messy, right? It's a red. You can see there's no one really dominating speed-wise. I guess the 8 is the leftmost horse, but you see to the right, the surface distance. You got all these horses that aren't kind of plotted, is because they're trying the distance for the first time. So even though the speed contention looks light, the rating is high, so it looks like there's speed in the race. Just don't know how it's going to unfold. It's like a little bit murky to me, and I'm looking for in this race more like pressers. I think that are going to be better at 2 turns, if that makes sense. So that was kind of my approach on this race, because there could be kind of speed types in this race. That's another reason I don't like the race with Mo Donegal. I feel like he's going to have to run hard and to win or get in the money, and I just don't know how the pace is going to wash out in the long run. So I don't really have a feel for it.
Well, as you mentioned, the pace, and Mo Donegal, if he doesn't participate, that will draw in number 13, a horse that did set the pace in the Holy Bull. He was drawn inside, so he's kind of moving from one extreme to the other. But does kind of force his hand a little bit more. And I remember maybe you guys mentioned, or you and I talking after this race, kind of like, this is a horse a little bit on the runty side, just a little bit on the smaller side. He kind of has that turf action. So probably if he does go in and with this post, is going to be one of those pace setters that kind of has to force the pace, given his running style. And also, I guess, just kind of keeping with the theme of the horses coming out of that race, number 10, Giant Game. Now we do have the note where it says equipment, scrolling over, that might have displaced kind of the soft palate. I read that report as well. So that's something to consider with this horse. But I don't know if you mind like double clicking on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile running line. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go back and forth a little bit. Just if you kind of clear out the grid and then.
Okay.
Because, and the reason I want to bring this up is to look at the contrast of, because I give him a look in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile based on that plot. Do you mind clicking on it, double clicking so we can look at the plot?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at the wrong race.
That's okay.
Okay, it's early still here in the West Coast. Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, just he's the number 7, and it was just one of those that we had the lighter, kind of moderate, sort of the same kind of murky kind of pace scenario, but it was just kind of one of those plots. It's like, this horse, I don't know if he's good enough, I don't know if he's fast enough, but just kind of based on the plot, putting him in there and finished 3rd. And he really doesn't have that type of plot in this race. So, people that are kind of looking at his running lines, if he gets back to that effort, but it's just a big if at this point.
He's got to really jump up, and I don't think so. That was just maybe it was the issue with the palate, but I don't know. Even so, I think he'll need a race, and wouldn't be surprised to see him, if he runs a good race, maybe show up at Keeneland to try to get some more points or something, if he improves.
That's a good thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the other thing is in that race, I don't think there was, I guess, who else was in that race? We talked about Galt a little bit. Surprised to see him on the lead in that race, but I guess, like you said, he had to go from the inside. So those horses, I kind of like Mo Donegal, but he's going to be scratched. So like, that's the kind of assumption I made. So I really don't want anyone out of the Holy Bull, to be honest with you.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and I would be against simplification to even kind of hit the board. I mean, if you really, at a short price, just because there's so many other options and horses that can finish, kind of 2nd, 3rd, or 4th.
Yeah, and the other thing about him, just looking at his figures, he kind of like, you see is like good race, bad race, good race, bad race. And he's kind of like, you could consider this almost like 2 good races in a row, right? So I think he's going to back up again.
Yeah, it's a declining speed figure pattern.
Yeah. So, I guess when I'm looking at this race, again, you have to project a lot of things going on in, 3-year-old racing, as they grow up and stuff. And I thought the horse that was, most interesting to me was Emmanuel, the Todd Pletcher horse. He ran his first race, his Gulfstream, ran a B+ in a 92. And, like a horse runs a big effort like that, they usually kind of back up if they're not quality. Well, he did the opposite. I mean, he actually, in my opinion, even ran better the 2nd time with another B+. I don't know if you watched the race, Emily, but I mean, the jock didn't even move on this horse in mid-stretch, and then just like, okay. And his horse, 2 races, has exploded late in the race. And I was just like, been wowed both times with this horse.
I have absolutely like no knocks on what he's done both those races. As you mentioned, they're impressive. They're getting better. I look at the one thing that just kind of stuck out at me is like, okay, they moved him to Tampa, right? So at first I'm like, that's kind of a negative, right? Because even for the same condition, this optional claiming 75,000 and 1X, it's for a $34,000 purse compared to staying at Gulfstream for 61,000. Now I know connections, these type of connections probably don't care, but that was just something that I'm like, well, maybe he's not as good as they think or whatever. But then I kind of paused and I'm like, the reason that I think they did that was they wanted a 2-turn race. purse aside, class aside, they wanted to see if this horse is a two-turn horse, like
Yeah.
where to go. So that's sort of where I read that placement. And so I can kind of see why they did that, just looking at him visually. I don't think he's necessarily a horse that's going to get better as the distances go, but could be in the right place in time for this particular race on this particular day, just kind of based on the way this field stacks up. But that is something that when I look at him going forward, is just kind of something that I'm going to have to kind of keep in mind, because I think part of the reason they did want to get him out in front, just kind of based on his physicality, probably doesn't want to be behind horses. So might, kind of be a one-dimensional in that sense for these longer distances.
Could be. I mean, another reason why he could have went to Tampa, maybe they were, initial plan was maybe thinking about the Tampa Bay Derby, right? And in fact, that's the other thing I'm surprised that this horse isn't in that race. I mean, it's next week. I mean, he ran over the track. You would think, just leave him there, right? I mean, you got your big horses here, and the Fountain of Youth. And the only thing I could think of, this horse may be thriving right now, and they want to just take advantage of it. That's the only thing I could think about, because I'm just surprised this horse wasn't it. After that race, I'm like, oh, Tampa Bay Derby, right? And he's not. They shipped him here, so I thought that was interesting. You got a lot of horses stretching out, so I don't know, like, I mean, some of them are really good sprinters, like the 5, but I still think these, some of these aren't two-turn types. The one horse that I thought was another horse that's kind of improving, it looked like a two-turn horse to me. Well, even though he ran his last race only one turn first time, would be In Due Time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like the improve on this horse. I think this horse is coming into this race top notch. I'm looking for another move forward. He won that race easily. So he's got tactical speed, yet he doesn't need the lead like some of these other horses. And I think he showed the ability he can really finish.
And he's a big horse,
Yeah.
So it was kind of surprising because you watch the early stages of that race, and he's not totally comfortable, but he's not freaking out, right? You can just tell it's like he's like a big man in like a small jacket, right? He's just like, let me get out and let me run, and he did, and I'm just he caught the eye in that, so a definite must use in this spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 6 is interesting just because, I mean, and I think it's, I guess 6 in the 3 we could talk about a little bit here. And I think both of those horses, I think, are probably going to point for something down the road. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But Rattle and Roll, I mean, obviously ran very well in one of the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. I'm just thinking maybe Keeneland's, but even though they said he was kind of prepping for the Tampa Derby originally. So I don't know. To me, with McPeak, this horse's next race is probably going to be Keeneland. That's my guess. So I'm thinking this is a prep. This is a nice horse, someone to watch down the road. But I don't think this race, off the layoff is the best thing with him. He's a deep closer. If you look at the plot, he's a deep closer. That's tough in this race, especially with, you don't know how it's going to play out, but they just don't do as well with Gulfstream. I'm thinking that's a prep for him. And the 3 is the other one I thought, we talked about this race a million times, this Kentucky Jockey Club, jockey, whatever it is. But this is, Roman's horse, another horse I think that's just kind of going to be prepping for something down the path at Keeneland is my guess. So, I mean, that's why I thought those 2, when you looked at the plot, looked like presser. Well, one's a deep closer, but he's a nice square. The other one's like a presser that I thought maybe, could do some things, I'm just thinking that I don't think tomorrow's the day or Saturday's the day for them.
I'm split on that. So as far as Rattle and Roll, I agree. I think this is a race this horse is probably going to need, just in terms of the barn, the way that they bring horses around. Based on his first 2 races, kind of seemed like a horse that kind of needed a few to kind of get going. Does come from off the pace, but certainly has some quality, has that improvement. Grade 1 winner. So, that's tough to just kind of dismiss on there. As far as Howling Time, we have actually talked about this horse because he was entered to run in the Sam Davis. Since, and I was watching him work, and I kind of like the way he worked, and I like the way that he's coming into this race. His works since that scratch even better, just from a visual standpoint. the type of works that this horse should be sitting on a peak effort. Whether it's good enough, who knows, but they're not the type of works that to me look like, we're getting him a spot and he's got to move forward. I think they are looking for a race, especially with that scratch. Has those, I think it's 2 or 3 works, I can't remember, coming since that scratch into this race. You mentioned last time that you liked the fact that Talamo, who didn't ship in to ride Giant Game, has been sticking with this horse, sticks with this horse today. So I think there is some intent. Yeah, that scratch was on 12-12. Yes. So he has those, and visually they match. It's not just the times, like
Yeah. No, I mean, now that you say visually look good, and then you just look at the time. You look at 1 of 103. I mean, that's pretty significant.
And he looks, and just like if you go to the other videos, like he kind of looks a little awkward. He kind of looks like he looks just physically better. Like just I don't know.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Maybe the interesting scratch there. Maybe he was working so well over the track, they probably said, we'll keep him here. Oh, were those works after that? I don't know.
He was training at Gulfstream before, and
whole
then
time,
yeah.
Maybe they jogged him over the track. They didn't like maybe how he was handling the track. Who knows?
It was an early scratch. I remember that. It was like the day before
okay.
the scratch. So
something came up. All right. Well, okay. I liked. I thought he was a stalker. I thought he had a chance. Now, I'm listening to you. I would upgrade him then in that spot. So yeah. So that's.
And he does come out of that key race, and I did the kind of the one extra step that he was in that first part of the field that has done well. So. Yeah. There's a couple things to like, and should be a fair price, which is important on a horse like this.
So to me, I mean 3. Okay, I'll include you 3, 4, and 8 of them. The horses I want to play around with, assuming the 12 is going to be scratched anyway. That's where I'm at. Is there anything we missed here? Anybody else?
I mean, I think you kind of covered it, just sort of in a blanket, talking about those horses, the other horses that are just kind of stretching out. Maybe it is worth mentioning the 5 a little bit, just because it's a horse that doesn't have any he's all green and things like that, but it seemed like to me, I mean, he almost had, I would have maybe given that perfect, because he just kind of tracked and fell into the lead as the other pace horse kind of backed up and then was run down late in the swale, and just kind of one of those efforts. It's tough to see a move forward as he's getting around 2 turns, when he didn't win with a perfect trip in a grade 3. So
and he'll take money just based on his speed figures and the fact they ran well in a grade 3 last time. So
and the same thing with the 7.
So all right, well, I think we got it covered. I think we're kind of in agreement, right? We're around, assuming the 12's out, we're going to be around the 4, 3, 4, and 8 of the horses that seem like logical contenders in here. We're kind of negative on the Holy Bull, and I guess the biggest downplay will be the 2, because he'll take the most money, right? That's it. Gulfstream, the Fountain of Youth. Good luck, everyone. Thanks for listening to us. Check us out on YouTube, subscribe to this channel, and check us out on our website, opticseq.com. Thanks.